There are places in this world that hold a darkness that seeps into the very soil, staining history with secrets. Most people see only the surface, the buildings, the monuments, the flags waving in the breeze. But some of us feel a dissonance, a sense that the history we know is a carefully constructed story, hiding a darker truth. What if the government you think you know is not the original government, but a corporation masquerading as a republic? The curtain is about to be pulled back. Issued by President Abraham Lincoln on April 24, 1863, during the American Civil War, General Orders No. 100, also known as the Lieber Code, was the first modern, comprehensive codification of the laws of war. Drafted by legal scholar Francis Lieber, it served as the instructional guide for Union soldiers regarding conduct in the field, treatment of captives, and the application of martial law. The document consists of 157 articles designed to balance the harsh necessities of war with humanitarian principles. The code governs martial law, which is defined as the emergency suspension of ordinary law, replaced by military rule in a designated area during war. It is used for maintaining order, protecting inhabitants, and punishing violators. Military necessity, Art. Steam 14-16. The code permits actions essential to secure the ends of the war, including the destruction of life and property, but explicitly prohibits cruelty, that is, the infliction of suffering for the sake of suffering or for revenge. Protection of civilians and property, Arts 37-38. Private property, pillage, and waste are treated as high crimes. Property can only be seized for military necessity and should be paid or receipted for. Non-combatants, the code demands respect for women, religion, and private property. Treatment of prisoners of war, the code mandates that prisoners be treated humanely. It explicitly prohibited torture to extort confessions. The code distinguishes between legitimate soldiers and unlawful combatants, guerrillas, spies. Spies, war traitors, and guerrillas acting outside the rules of war are subject to swift punishment, including death. It addressed the treatment of enslaved people, clarifying that prisoners of war should not be sold. It transformed how the Union Army conducted the war, bringing structure to the often chaotic nature of the conflict. The Lieber Code influenced future international law, serving as a basis for the Hague Conventions and later Geneva Conventions. It provided a legal framework for military tribunals, including the trial of Henry Wirz, the commandant of the Confederate prison at Andersonville. The code was an outworking of President Lincoln's goals to manage a modern, biracial, and volunteer army fighting a civil war. It aimed to reduce the savagery that often accompanies war by providing strict rules. The code was used by Union soldiers throughout the war and was later utilized during the Philippine-American War to manage insurgencies. Under the Lieber Code, military commanders in the field were given significant authority, including the ability to authorize the execution of war criminals. The Expatriation Act of 1868, 15 Stattern 223, declared that the right of expatriation, the right to renounce U.S. citizenship, is a natural, inherent right of all people. Passed by Congress on July 27, 1868, it prohibited the U.S. government from restricting this right and affirmed that foreign nationals who become Americans have the same rights as native-born citizens. The act established that the ability to change citizenship is essential to the enjoyment of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It was specifically designed to protect newly naturalized Americans from foreign allegiance claims, particularly when returning to their native countries. The act explicitly declared that any officer of the U.S. government who restricts or questions the right of expatriation is in violation of the country's fundamental principles. It was a response to crises where other nations claimed foreign-born U.S. citizens still owed military service or allegiance, often forcing them back into service. The 1868 Act did not outline the exact procedures or circumstances required for an individual to renounce their citizenship. It only asserted the right to do so. Common law versus statute, it overturned the old common law rule that allegiance to a nation was perpetual and could not be broken. Voluntary versus involuntary, while it affirmed the voluntary right, it was later interpreted and built upon by subsequent laws regarding involuntary loss of citizenship. The 1868 Act largely arose to address conflicts with European nations, ensuring that when an individual naturalized in the U.S., their former foreign allegiance was fully severed. The year is 1871. The nation, still raw from the Civil War, struggles to rebuild. In the capital, a shadow falls, quiet, unnoticed. Powerful men use words, not weapons, crafting a legal Trojan horse in secret. They create a new entity, a municipal corporation, changing the nation's future in silence. The document at the heart of this mystery is the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871. It is officially recorded in the United States Statutes at Large, hiding in plain sight. This act did more than just consolidate the local governments of Washington City and Georgetown. It performed a dark legal baptism. It declared the new, unified government for the district to be a body corporate for municipal purposes. With these few words, a new United States was born. Not the Republic of the Founders, but a corporation. A private entity capable of entering into contracts, owning property, and, most importantly, incurring debt. This was the turning point. Before 1871, the United States was a concept, a union of sovereign states. After 1871, another United States existed, a corporate entity with its jurisdiction centered on the 10-mile square of the District of Columbia. It was a government within a government, a shadow entity wearing the face of the original. This corporate United States was not bound by the same constitutional restraints. It was a business. And like any business, its primary motive was not liberty or justice, but profit and control. The Act of 1871 was its birth certificate, the moment this legal phantom drew its first breath. Think about what this means. A corporation is not a government of the people. It has a board of directors, not elected representatives. It issues policies, not laws. It has employees and subjects, not sovereign citizens. By creating this corporate entity, Congress opened a Pandora's box of legal manipulation. The very definition of citizen, state, and law could now be redefined under corporate policy. This act laid the foundation for a new system of control, one based not on consent of the governed, but on the fine print of contracts that most people never even knew they signed. It was the beginning of a great deception. The air in Washington, D.C. must have felt different after that day, February 21, 1871. A subtle shift in the spiritual and legal atmosphere. The original republic was now haunted by its corporate doppelganger. This new entity would grow in power, its tentacles slowly extending beyond the District of Columbia, until it ensnared the entire nation in its web of commerce and debt. This is not a story about ghosts. It is a story about the creation of a legal ghost, an artificial entity that now casts a long, dark shadow over the lives of every American. This is where our investigation begins, at the dark corporate birth of a nation. After the Civil War, Washington, D.C. was a patchwork of cities: Georgetown, Washington City, and Washington County, each with its own government. The Act of 1871 merged them into a single entity, a legal alchemy that erased old identities overnight. Power shifted to a new centralized order, cloaked in secrecy. The city's soul was hollowed out, replaced by a cold corporate shell. The hidden birth was complete. The Act of 1871 created a government that exists only on paper, a body corporate for municipal purposes. This legal fiction, born from ink and signatures, unleashed a new kind of power, intangible, yet terrifyingly real. Unlike governments rooted in people and land, this corporation is accountable to shareholders, not citizens. The blueprint was set, a nation ruled by commerce and contract, not by the will of the people. In 1871, a silent takeover began. The United States became a federal corporation, operating alongside the original republic, two governments, one name. This ambiguity became a weapon, blurring lines of authority and binding citizens in legal webs. Look for gold-fringed flags. They mark the corporate entity, not the republic. The Act of 1871 built a legal cage, quietly replacing the republic with corporate rule. The District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871 cast a corporate veil over government, transforming it into a separate legal entity, shielding true power behind an impersonal facade. Laws became codes, rights became privileges, and citizens became subjects to corporate policy. The corporate veil descended, quietly changing the very foundation of American governance. To understand this transformation, you must grasp the concept of a legal fiction, an artificial entity created by law, like a corporation. This phantom can own property, sue, and even live forever, but it has no soul or conscience. Through birth certificates and state documents, the government creates a legal phantom that shares your name, turning you into an asset for the corporation. This is the difference between being sovereign and being haunted by a legal fiction. If the government is a corporation, who truly rules? The real power lies with international bankers, the creditors, who hold the debt and call the shots. The corporate government serves them, not the people. This is the unseen ruling class, hidden in the shadows. The secrets of this shadow government aren't just buried in law books. They're carved in stone, embedded in the very layout of Washington, D.C. The city's grand columns and towering monuments are instruments of power, filled with symbols of ancient secret societies. The Washington Monument, an Egyptian obelisk, is the most blatant example, a pagan symbol casting its shadow over the city. The city's streets form ritualistic patterns, pentagrams, squares, compasses, key symbols in Freemasonry. This is the architecture of control, a silent, constant reminder of who truly holds power. Whispers of the Illuminati echo through Washington, D.C., where ancient symbols and secret societies shape our history. The Illuminati, founded in 1776, are said to have infiltrated Freemasonry and government, aiming for a new world order. Their symbols, like the pentagram, are hidden in the city's very design. The best way to hide is in plain sight. Are these just whispers, or the blueprint of our unseen reality? The pyramid and the all-seeing eye on your dollar bill aren't just decoration. They're symbols of a secret order, an unfinished pyramid for their hierarchy, the eye for their watchful power. Novus Ordo Seclorum, New World Order, declares their goal. Every time you use a dollar, you acknowledge their authority. The truth is hidden in plain sight. In 1871, the corporate United States was born, but the real trick was creating a legal double for every American, a phantom called the straw man. When you were born, your parents unknowingly registered this legal fiction with a birth certificate. The all-caps name is not you, but a corporate entity, your straw man. This is the invisible chain, binding you to a system where you are no longer truly free. Why create this elaborate system of legal phantoms? The answer is debt. The corporate United States was born bankrupt, needing collateral. So it turned to the only resource it could control, the people, or rather, the legal fictions it created in their image. The birth certificate became a title to a trust, with your labor as its asset. These titles were bundled and pledged as collateral to international bankers. Gold was confiscated. We were forced to use debt-based currency. Every new birth certificate became a bond, traded to finance the corporate debt. You are not a citizen of a republic, but an asset of a bankrupt corporation. In the land of the free, our true status is hidden. We are governed by contract, not by consent. Every application, every box checked, trades a piece of sovereignty for privilege. These are the invisible bars of your cage. The illusion of choice is the most powerful tool of control. Knowledge is the key. Reclaim your sovereignty and step out of the system's shadow. At the heart of the system lies debt, a principle, not a person, ruling all. The corporate United States has always operated in bankruptcy, with government as debtor and international bankers as creditors. True power belongs to these creditors, who control everything from the shadows, secured by law and finance. The government pledged land, resources, and even the people's future labor as collateral, making citizens mere assets. Since House Joint Resolution 192 in 1933, debts can only be discharged, never paid, trapping everyone in endless servitude to the creditors. This is the modern state, a collection agency, for an unseen financial elite. The corporate state replaced common law, the law of the land, with admiralty law, the law of commerce. Citizens became corporate fictions, dragged into a jurisdiction where contracts and statutes rule. Your birth certificate launches your straw man into this sea of commerce. Courts are now commercial tribunals, not halls of justice. Statutes are corporate rules, not true laws, and the Uniform Commercial Code governs all. Every interaction with government is a commercial transaction, binding you to their system. This legal shift locked the prison door on sovereignty. The system's greatest weapon is manipulating jurisdiction. Power only exists if you consent. By acting as your straw man or hiring an attorney, you grant them authority. Federal laws apply only by your agreement, turning every state into a federal zone by consent. Agencies like the IRS can only touch. Reclaiming your power starts with refusing their game. The 1871 Act birthed a corporate shadow nation, ruled by contracts and legal fictions. Our labor became collateral for unseen creditors. The all-caps name is the phantom haunting us all. The law's magic made this entity real, binding us from birth to death. We mistake this web for reality, never questioning its legitimacy. The true battle is for your identity, sovereign soul, or corporate asset. The silence around this truth keeps the machine running. The final question is personal. Do you see a living soul or a legal fiction in the mirror? The system's power depends on your consent to play the straw man. Knowledge is your weapon. Self-education breaks the spell. Their control collapses when you withdraw consent. Sovereignty is yours to reclaim. Remember who you are beyond the corporate name. The path is difficult, but truth is your shield. Every day, the choice is yours. Consent to fiction, or stand as a free soul. The War Powers Resolution of 1973, War Powers Act, limits the U.S. President's authority to commit armed forces abroad without congressional approval. It mandates reporting within 48 hours of troop deployment into hostilities, initiates a 60-day limit on engagement, plus 30-day withdrawal, and requires termination of activities unless Congress declares war or authorizes continued action. Enacted over President Nixon's veto, the law aimed to restore the balance of power, ensuring Congress has a say in committing U.S. forces to war, following the Vietnam War. The president must make every possible effort to consult with Congress before introducing troops into hostilities. Reporting, 48-hour report. Within 48 hours of deploying troops into imminent hostilities, the president must submit a written report to Congress, according to Britannica. The president must terminate the use of troops within 60 days unless Congress authorizes a longer period, declares war, or is unable to meet due to an attack. A 30-day extension is allowed for safe withdrawal. Congress can, at any time, pass a concurrent resolution to force the immediate removal of troops, as detailed in the Friends Committee on National Legislation Guide and Congress.gov analysis. The War Powers Act is rooted in Article 1 of the Constitution, which grants Congress the power to declare war, while Article 2 makes the President Commander-in-Chief. Criticism and implementation. Every president since 1973 has viewed the act as an unconstitutional infringement on executive power, often claiming compliance consistent with the act rather than directly under it. Critics often argue the act is ineffective, as presidents continue to initiate military actions without formal declarations of war, notes the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum and Britannica. Disputes arise over what constitutes hostilities, as the executive branch often interprets this narrowly to avoid triggering the 60-day clock. For detailed procedural steps in the House and Senate regarding the act, see this Congress. Our journey into the dark corporate birth of America ends here, but your own investigation has just begun. The Act of 1871 is not a closed chapter. Its consequences echo in our lives today. The future is an unwritten chapter. Question the authority of those who claim to rule over you. The truth waits in the shadows for those brave enough to seek it.